Welcome, everybody, to DAT Poker Podcast, episode 106 for August 13th, 2021. I'm your host, Dave Schwartz, alongside Roscoe P. Coltrane.
So you can fancy yourselves experts, eh?
Terrence Chan. T, how are you?
I'm even better after a comic book guy. That's always going to help. Just trying to survive and not melt through the epic heat of yet another British Columbian heat wave and firestorm. And I hear you guys are getting it too. They used to call it beautiful British Columbia, but when all the trees burn down, we'll see if it still is.
Smoky British Columbia. And Daniel Negreanu in Mexico. Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing great. I just first and foremost want to say, for those that don't know, we had some technical issues start to show, and I want to say the show must go on. Here's the issue. Adam may have to look to the side occasionally. For those of you watching, I hope that's okay. I hope it's still worth watching and hanging with us. But you know what? We're troopers. We're going to make this thing work, and he'll be okay. We'll be okay. We're going to have a great show.
Based on the YouTube comments that we get every week, the most important thing is that Ross is always on camera so that somebody can be like, hey, how come that one guy in the corner never talks? Yeah. And somebody has to be curious why there's an Asian guy in the show. Those are the two consistent themes of the comments every week. So we get those two out of the way.
How surprised people are that when they see you, they're like, oh shit, Terrence Chan's Asian? Like, how many Chans do you know that are just like, white dudes? Like, not possible.
Very few Chans are not Chinese. However, very few Terrences are. So
it's a little mix up. One of my best friends is named Angus Lee. He actually makes the intro music for this podcast. And he was in the yearbook, he was the only white guy in the entire page.
Well, Lee's a fantastic name because you can be black, white, like you can be Lee is a very versatile surname over the phone. So
it's fascinating, the comments, and I poke in every once in a while and read them. And we said maybe 4 words about COVID last week in an hour show.
Oh, it doesn't matter,
and
oh God,
all the fucking comments are COVID related.
So just on that. So I've been streaming, as you guys know, I stream my tournaments and stuff. And within my stream, I have what's called a restream chat. So I have my YouTube, I have my Twitch, I have my Twitter, and I have my Facebook all in one thing. So I can follow all of them at the same time. And they kind of intermix, right? And I'm like, every time I do it, I'm like, fucking idiot. If I just mention anything about COVID, nothing, not even controversial, just be like, oh yeah, my friend got COVID. He's not doing so hot. Boom. It literally ruins because now I'm trying to read the chat and it's going, blah, 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 like, fuck you, fake news, libtard, cuck this, blah, blah, fucking stupid. And then we got to get the blocks out and everybody's so fucking angry. And one guy's like, I'll never watch anything you do again. I'm like, oh shit, bro. Why do I do this? Anytime you get political or anything like that, doing a stream, I don't mind talking about this stuff, like we talk about here, but when we do the stream, it actually ruins it. Yeah. People in chat, because they're like, oh, this is stupid. Because some people want to ask questions about the hand and this, and it's like I have to basically shut up for 4 minutes and wait till they're done, and then answer a random question, be like, yeah, I've had 3 royal flushes in my life. They're fantastic. Royal flushes are great hands. You want to get one if you can. I don't know.
Try and get them. People are triggered. They get so triggered.
A different way. I'll be like, I'm having this vegan burger. It's fake meat. And then it's a whole new conversation. Shit.
So crazy. All right. Speaking of easily triggered and COVID and all that kind of stuff, let's get right into it. So this week, the World Series of Poker clarified and added. They clarified after they added Rule 115. And this, if you go to the World Series of Poker webpage, there is a set of rules for the in-person World Series of Poker in Las Vegas, quickly approaching. And the rule is, and I don't want to go all the way through it because it's sort of long in legal language, but you can tell that the lawyers at the Harrah's and Caesars or whatever it's called nowadays, got together and went, okay, so now what happens if we have X happen? And this is their job. They're paid to try and defuse these situations before they happen, write rules and regulations for worst case scenarios. And the way this rule reads is that the World Series of Poker can remove any poker player who tests positive for COVID or is in the vicinity of anybody who tests positive for COVID. And that's problematic for a million reasons. First off, because the obvious: if a dealer gets COVID and runs through 40 players or 50 players in an hour, and it's found out, and then all those players that made it through to the final the next day, all of a sudden, if you played at table 9 with this dealer, you are within not saying they would do it. All I'm saying is this rule allows them to do it, and so. There's a lot of people saying, geez, if that's a rule, I'm not coming to the World Series. You buy into a 10K, limit hold'em event, and all of a sudden, an hour in, you're out not because you had COVID, but because somebody at your table did, and you were exposed to them. So there was a lot of sort of hand wringing and waving your arms, and people on Twitter going, "Wow, this is stupid. We're not going to come to the World Series with this rule." And that went on for a couple of days. And then today, the World Series of Poker came out and they clarified. And what they wrote was, I'll read it. The health and safety of the World Series of Poker participants and team members is our top priority. To that end, Caesars Entertainment will continue operating in a manner consistent with CDC guidelines while following the applicable rules and mandates of our local governments and regulators at all times. Consistent with current CDC guidelines, participants who are known to have been exposed to a person who has tested positive for COVID will not be required to leave the tournament and quarantine if they are fully vaccinated within the appropriate timing parameters and remain asymptomatic since the time of exposure. So 14 days clear of being double vaxxed and asymptomatic. So you're not sneezing on everybody kind of thing. They continue, we recognize that the COVID-19 public health situation is constantly evolving. We will continue to work with our team of health and safety experts, local government and our regulators, and all policies are subject to change as guidance evolves. We remain to blah, blah, blah. So this is a tweet. This isn't a rule. So I went, okay, well, I'll go back and I'll look at the rules at the World Series of Poker, see if they've updated Rule 115, which is the problematic rule. And it's still there. And I don't know, this just came out this afternoon, this clarification, and maybe they're going to, alter the rules. But currently they still have that rule there. Now they say in a tweet that they're not going to remove people because you were close to somebody who tested positive, but that is not what it says in the rules. So it's a bit problematic there.
I see. The thing is, the rule says they reserve the right, and they're like, essentially what this is, and the way that the rule is written, it's to cover your ass. It's lawyers going, we need to protect our ass in every way, shape, or form, make sure we're following the CDC guidelines. But like underneath all this, right? Everyone's like, I get it. Obviously, would be annoyed by this rule. But underneath it all is like the fact that Caesars at any point can literally remove anybody for any reason they want. So like that rule was already in place. Adam, if Terrence is at the final table, limit hold, and like, fuck this guy. He's already won too many of these. Sorry, Terrence, we don't want your business. They legally, so here's the thing. They legally have the right to do that. It sounds insane that that's true, but it is, right? So this is an extension of that, where essentially what they're doing, I think, with that rule, and putting that language and being such a broad brush, is protect themselves. So like whatever they see fit as far as like an idea, like that they could impose, they will. But I think what's underneath it all, and I think Matt Glantz tweeted this or whatever, it's really an undercover way of saying, if you're vaccinated, you're safe. If you're not, it's susceptible to the DQ. Because in this, in the update today, they said, if you're fully vaxxed and you're not symptomatic or whatever like that, you're not going to be quarantined, you're not going to be DQ. So it's an undercover way of essentially telling people, like, come at your own risk. If you're not vaxxed and we find out and you start having symptoms and, you're spreading it or whatever, like it could cost you.
So here's what I'll just quickly say in response to that. And if you're saying that, well, they can remove you for any reason, this one is really specific about, it's not we don't like you or you were contrary to the integrity of the tournament. This is very specific about if you've been in proximity with somebody who has COVID. So, to have it that specific in the rule, and which allows them to do it, you have no recourse. And like, I just don't trust a giant corporation like this with lawyers when they do write a specific rule like this, not to enforce it. That's and I hope they change it at some point. And I know, Terrence,
in the original rule, there's nothing about being fully vaccinated in the Rule 115.
Right.
Yeah, it is. I mean, there's so much to unpack here. Number one being what Daniel said, like, will they actually do this? Will they actually enforce this? If we do find out that the dealer, at some given dealer tests positive for COVID, which will absolutely happen at some point, and that dealer was on tables 12 through 21 throughout their down, Does that mean everybody through 12 through 21 who is unvaccinated or cannot prove their vaccination will be disqualified? Will that actually happen?
No.
Because that sounds amazing and mind-blowing, and you can see why people will be scared. Then you have the other things of like, proof of vaccines, right? Like, I mean, I don't know about you guys. I just got like this tiny little business card that says Pfizer on it, and doesn't like, I could make 100 of these at Kinko's in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack here, but what's going on now is that it's everybody's becoming a little less optimistic about the World Series going off, and it's looking really hard to figure out how this thing can actually be a success. And that this is completely putting aside all of the politics that we just talked about and people's opinions on vaccinations and masks and all this stuff, just completely aside from this, looking purely at the logistical perspective. What is this actually going to look like, the World Series?
Here's the thing. Here's my belief, right? Obviously, Twitter, so like we see stuff and everything blows up into a big thing, right? My perception of what will happen is there's no chance in hell this rule gets enforced, because the World Series would be over immediately. Like if it happens once, if in event number 2, 15 people are DQ'd somehow and they were whatever, because they were near a deal or whatever, like nobody else is going to play. I mean, you might as well just shut it down right away. Just not going to happen. So what I perceive happening, because there's not going to be on-site testing for players, essentially it's going to be soft policing, where if you see a dude coughing up a lung or whatever, you're like, all right, maybe you do some on-site testing for that guy, and if he tests positive, he's eliminated or something along those lines. But overall, I think what they're doing is they're just trying to follow the Nevada gaming rules and make sure that they have it in writing so that they're in accordance with CDC guidelines. Having said that, we have another, whatever it is, like 6 weeks or so before the World Series starts, and a whole bunch of shit can change. Things could get worse, things could get better. So you're right in saying that there's a lot up in the air about what it's going to look like, because frankly, right now, and I checked this because I have people in Vegas, the hospitals are full, right? Like hospitals are full of people who have COVID right now. And that typically leads to, further restrictions and things like that about gatherings and reverting back to kind of some of the stipulations we had before. So, but ultimately, I think the concern or fear, from what I gather, if you're vaccinated, right, and you show up to the World Series of Poker, you run no risk. I can't say no because it's in the language, but like, it's not really going to happen. You'd be kind of, if you're not vaxxed, who knows? But you're right about another thing too. I saw 2 scumbags at my table at the Wynn. Like when I was playing, they were making one guy had like a fake vax card, and he was like copying it, putting somebody else's name on it. Like that's a big problem going forward. I know in Canada they're doing that, where you have to have proof of vaccine. Like the problem I know in Vegas is all you have is this little piece of paper. Do they have something more tangible? Not a passport necessarily, but like if I lost that piece of paper, like how do I prove I was vaccinated? It seems like we're not set up logistically, like you said, not just for the World Series of Poker, but for like the country and the world at large that are going to try to enforce this, proof of vaccine stuff.
Yeah, and Terrence touched on it a little bit here, where the poker world is less and less enthusiastic about or optimistic about what's going to happen here. And we've got mask mandates in Las Vegas, right? So if you're indoors, you have to wear a mask. And there's a lot of people who are not interested in, and I think that gets reviewed at the end of September or the end of August. I'm not sure. Maybe it's coming up, but there's a lot of people who are not interested in going to Las Vegas to play in the World Series if they have to wear a mask. So yeah, it's looking more and more like this is going to be sort of a scaled down version of the World Series. If they continue with the entire schedule, who knows? But again, things might turn around. Who knows? There's
so much we don't know. It's just been a weird time with COVID. We had the NHL come back, the NBA, everybody's coming with these rules, and it's all kind of happening last minute. And you got to expect something similar with the World Series of Poker. But a lot of it's going to be out of their hands, right? A lot of it's just going to be like, I asked Carrie Katz, and I know Carrie's like, doesn't want to wear a mask or whatever. At the PokerGO studio for Poker Masters, I was like, are we going to have to wear masks? And he's like, yes, because it's not up to him. It's not up to the World Series of Poker. It's simply, there are higher ups that, have rules and you have to follow them. Because I think you're right, Adam, in that, say the people who grind, every day at the World Series of Poker for like 6 weeks, for a lot of those people, the idea of wearing a mask for 12 to 14 hours a day while you play is less appealing than otherwise, right? I hate it. I mean, I'll do it, right? My wife's like, you better wear a mask, whatever. Like, I'll do it. But I mean, I'm vaccinated. I'd rather not, but I mean, I understand if we have to. It would suck. Like I was thinking about it for the vlogs too. Like me talking through a mask, going king queen, like I don't know. It's fucking
Poker reporters trying to identify who a player is. Like even you see that much of their face and be like, is that Daniel Negreanu or?
I'm not gonna lie too. Like there's a substantial amount of information that I gain when I look at somebody when they're not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
The entire bottom half of your face, you have a nose, you have lips that move, you have like all this stuff you can see in a face where you can pick up tells, like actual physical tells, where, now, I mean, when people's got a whole mask, you have the eyes, of course, but so much of the subtleties that you find in someone's tells are going to be covered now, which, what can we do?
I'm glad you mentioned, though, the thing out of people's hands, because, even more beyond mask mandates, if something catastrophic could happen is you could have, I mean, what's the first event? It's like a $500 buy. It's some huge field event, right? That's got multiple flights. I forget what's the reunion. Is that what it's called? It's going to be a huge field. Imagine if there's just a big outbreak there. And what if there's an outbreak, 3-4 events, they do all the contract tracing, finds out that like all these places are tied back to the real, like they might just have to shut the whole thing down.
Well,
like
but based on what we've seen of like Delta, from what I know, whatever, it seems pretty damn contagious. Like, it seems to me that like it's very, very likely that'll happen, right? Like, I mean, when you put that many people in a room, like it's very likely there's going to be an outbreak. Like, what are the chances that we just happen to have 7,000 people in here and everything goes kumbaya the entire month? I mean, especially
when at a conservative estimate, maybe 30% of them are unvaccinated, right? I don't even guess what it might be, but I think that's like a reasonable number. You touched on something last week, which is that, just what the numbers will look like if the vaccine, like if the rules is the way it is now. If you're an unvaccinated person, and again, I don't fuck it, like we don't have to go into the vax versus anti-vax stuff, but strictly speaking, if you're unvaccinated for whatever reason, let's just say you have some immune system problem that doesn't allow you to get vaccinated, would you want to play under this rule, right? Like knowing that you can kind of be DQ'd at any time, unless you're that guy making fake vaccine cards, which I guess is the plus EV thing to do if you're unvaccinated and you want to play the World Series.
I mean, just think about how easy that's going to be. Like, it's really, this is the thing that kind of sucks about it in a sense. Is like, if that's what the proof of vaccine is going to be, like anybody can get one, whether you got the vax or not. And I think too, there should be carve outs for people like you mentioned that are have autoimmune deficiencies. I have a friend who's a hemophiliac, and his doctors have specifically said, you cannot get it yet. You have to wait because we don't have enough information. For those that don't know what a hemophiliac is, it's somebody who, when they have an open cut, like literally just like they could die because their blood doesn't coagulate, so they can bleed. If they have an internal cut, it's even worse. They can bleed through their whole system. So there's concerns for some people who have, issues like that. And I would imagine they would have a carve out and be safe, but who knows? It's like, I think here's the thing. Ultimately, it's this, right? If you choose to come play the World Series of Poker, vaccinated or not, right? You have to take on some inherent risk, right? It's period. Like, if you want to take part, you have to assume that they can't protect you. World Series of Poker, Caesars, they're not going to protect you. It is an environment where you could get it, you could get sick, all these kind of things. So that's a personal risk you choose to take. Playing the World Series of Poker, playing poker in general, isn't like a personal right, if you will, right? Like, you don't have a right to anything outside of like what the rules say. If the rules say, here, you got to wear a mask. If you're not vaxxed, you could get DQ'd. Those are the rules. And you have a personal choice whether or not you want to take on that risk.
Adam, I want to ask you, because you were sort of, not critical, I don't know the word, but you didn't like that this wasn't in the rules. Like, if you were the czar of the World Series, you were King Overlord, Ty Stewart and Jack Effel rolled into one, like, what would your wording look like?
You must be vaccinated to play in the World Series of Poker. That would be my rule. Because it's cut and dry.
And your little like 4x6 inch business card is going to be proof of that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you can find a way, like if I'm waving a magic wand and there's some way for me to, or for the World Series to be able to prove people that are vaccinated, then I would say, yeah.
What about carve outs for people? Because I mean, you're making it cut and dry, right? But like I said,
well, to your point though, they don't have a right to play in it, right? So
I have a friend who's like literally, can't get it. It's not like it's a difference, I think, sometimes too, when it's like, okay, I'd refuse to get it, or I actually have been advised not to. Like, I feel like in that regard, because here's the thing, what we're learning about this damn thing is that being vaccinated or not doesn't prevent you from being a host that transmits it at a pretty equal rate from what I'm hearing. So it's not like that person who's unvaccinated is all that much more of a risk to everyone else.
I mean, but at the same time, like,
he's a
should
risk
that
to
person be in a
himself.
room with 8,000 other people, right? Like, that person probably doesn't need to be at the Rio. You know,
for their own safety. For their own safety.
Yeah, for their own safety.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if there's a way to prove it or whatever. Maybe you have to show like something from your doctor. I don't know. Yeah, could it all be forged? Sure, but that's I think
how
that's
are they doing it. So like I see, here's the thing: we're so far. You were the United States of America, supposed to be a leader and all stuff. We're so far behind technologically. Like in Israel, everyone has an app, and in the Asian countries, they have an app. Boom, bang, proof of vaccination or whatever. We got a fucking 1965.
But it doesn't matter. Even if the United States has an app, you got a guy who's going to come in from Ukraine, and your job is to find out whether he's been vaccinated or not. And you can't read the writing on this card. Like, it doesn't matter. Even if the United States was as technologically advanced as all these places, it's the World Series of Poker. People are coming from everywhere. You're going to have to read this.
But here's the thing: if the U.S. and other countries are actually planning on going forward with like this sort of passports to us style idea, they better think ahead in terms of technology about like, okay, how do we prove or how do we know for sure this person was vaxxed or not? Are we going to do an antibody test to see, right? And also, what about the people who, I guess they have to wait? Like, because for some people who apparently, if you've had COVID, let's say, like if I got it, today and I wasn't vaccinated, then you already have antibodies. So there's like no point in getting it for 6 months or a year because it doesn't do anything for you.
Tough problem to solve. I don't know where the answer is, and I obviously just want to see the World Series of Poker go forward and have it be a big celebration and everybody have fun. But it's getting harder and harder to see how that can happen, given the cases are sort of on the rise. The Delta is so much more transmissible than the previous one, and we're seeing it here even in our province where the numbers are skyrocketing.
So it goes like alpha, beta, delta. When we get to F, is it the Foxen?
I see what you did there.
It's a good shot. I see what you did there.
Fox, Charlie. Oh, it's not Fox. It's Fox. I got it.
All right. But speaking of World Series Poker events that are happening, Daniel, you're in Mexico to take part in the GG Poker online series. We're through the World Series of Poker.com version. We're into the 33 events at GG Poker. We're through 9 events today. The first 9 events have happened. 3 of them had guarantees. They were all met and exceeded quite nicely. The return we talked about last week, the $50 buy-in that had a giant first place prize. Event number 6 was the $200 flip and go limit hold'em that had a $200 buy-in and $1 million guaranteed. And the go version, I guess, played out in under 3 hours. So this is like a dream for somebody who wants to not sit around for 16 hours and grind to, everything else has got to stop and you got to stare at a screen. This thing lasted 3 hours and somebody won a bracelet. And, I watched your stream a little bit, Daniel. It seemed like a lot of fun. You were explaining, and I still didn't understand. Like I caught some of it, but I'm doing other things and it's a bit convoluted. Can you give us a quick rundown of exactly what this flip and go was? Because it looked like a ton of fun.
Okay. So the flip and go, like you said, it's a $200 buy-in, right? Kind of. It is if you want to be in for 200, more than welcome. If you want to be in for 10,000, you can be. Yours truly was in for a solid 10. So here's the thing: there are 10 flights. We did 10 flights that morning, right? And one of the flights started at 4 a.m. Okay, I'm not up at 4 a.m., but I pre-registered. Okay, and because it's a flip and go, there really is only one decision to make, which is so the way the flip and go works is you get 3 cards and you have to throw one away before the flop. Okay, now you get to see everyone else's cards. So sometimes it makes sense to keep the other cards. Say, for example, you have King 10-6, right? But you see that there's 3 10s out and no 6s out. So King 10 is the hand to keep, but you would keep King 6 because it's drawing more live, right? So if you're not actually at the table, you don't get to make that choice. Like you just have to go with what they want, and they're basically always going to give you 2 high cards. So I entered all 10, and here's what else you can do. You can buy in for 1 stack for 200, right? Where you get 1,000 in chips, right? You can buy in for 2 stacks, 3 stacks, all the way up to 5 stacks, right? So I started my heat 8-hand with 5,000 in chips. Others start with 5,000. Some people start with just 1,000. So they're getting ridiculously good odds. I think the min cash was like $2,000. So you would get 10 extra money if you just like won your flip and go, right off the bat. And then what happens is this. So the very first hand, everyone's all in, right? If a guy with a full stack, 5K wins it, it's over, finished, right? If, however, say one guy who bought in for 1 stack wins the first hand, now he's going to have 8 stacks. He's going to have 8 stacks. But the other players with bigger stacks, now their hand would play against their hand would play against their hand. So there's actually a little bit more layers to strategy to that as well, right? So you can look at a hand that might be really bad shape against the 1K guy, but it dominates the guy who's I got 5K at the table, okay? So what you'll do is you'll just keep going all in every hand. So for several of the ones that I was able to play, because I had the biggest stack and the smaller stack one, like I get heads up right off the bat, right? So now I have 4K and my opponent has 7K. And then we go all in again, right? And, now you keep doing that and you hope to win. And the way that they did it was you could play as many times as you want, as many heats as you want, and every stack that you had went forward. So I won 2 out of 10. So I actually won 2 of them. So I had a big stack. The problem is that when we get to the go stage, 5-minute level, whee, as you said, it was like super crapshooty. But you're right, it was absolutely a lot of fun. It's, obviously it's not the most skillful event. We've had that discussion about the prestige and all that kind of stuff. It's a one-off. I'm okay with it. I think it was a lot of fun. And I do like the fact that it sort of is available to people of a wide variety of bankrooms, right? If you just want to get in there for $200, you could play, let's say, all 10 of them for 200 if you wanted to. Just take a real big shot, right? I went bonkers, put in 10K. I cashed for like 2,500 or something like that, which was a decent loss. But I'm trying to win bracelets, right? So it was fun for me, but fun for also people, I think, who play small. And anyways, it was a good way to sort of show off the feature because we have that flip and goes going all the time, as well as some of the other cool games like the Battle Royale that we added. So I think it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed, frankly, what GG did with this year's bracelet schedule because I have lots of time off, partly because I've been like, there's a phase event every day for like the Sunday day 2, but on both weeks so far, I've qualified immediately on the Sunday night. So I've had Monday, Wednesday, Friday completely free to just, relax here in Cabo and whatnot. But the big ones are coming. So I'm gearing up for some big streams on Sunday and Tuesday. We got Sunday's a big one. I'm day 2 of the 1K. And then we got, this is the big one, the Super Millions. It's a 10K buy-in with unlimited re-entry. And the final table, we're calling it Taco Tuesday. It's going to happen on ggpoker.tv. There'll be a live feed with whole cards on Tuesday. So that'll be the only tournament where, you play down to the final on one day, and then, you play the final table 2 days later.
And a $5 million guarantee on that tournament. Yeah. It's 10K buy-in, $5 million guaranteed, the Super Million starting Sunday. Huge guarantee, obviously, there. So that's awesome. And the double stack, the day 2, you mentioned the 1K double stack, it has a $4 million guarantee for a $1,000 buy-in. So we got lots of stuff coming up this week. As I mentioned, we're through 9 events. Event 10 is a $400 double chance PLO event starting tomorrow, Saturday. And then again, the 10K and the 1K double stacks day 2. Tuesday, you mentioned it, a $5,000 Pot Limit Omaha Championship, 2-day event. So that's Tuesday. And some smaller buy-ins too. There's a $500 buy-in on Thursday, the big 500. Which will attract a lot of people, and then a 10K heads up. You going to play the 10K heads up next week?
I'm so due, right? I did finally get off the schneid, as we know, at PokerGO Cup. But it would be really nice to have a feather in my cap where I just knock off, the heads up tournament online. It's going to be tough, but I imagine. But it's got a 128 player cap. But I'll certainly throw my hat in the ring. And I think they're fun. I think heads up tournaments are a blast. Like the matchups. Ooh. Phil Ivey against Patrick Antonius, how cool. Like, I think it's neat for the fans and stuff to.
Last year, you made it through a few rounds, right?
Yeah, I cashed in it last year. I ended up losing to a good young Asian player. I don't know if he won. I don't think he won. But yeah, no, they're blast. I like it. I think I hope so. Hope I'm better prepared for it this year even than I was last year. Because last year, when I played, I just sort of was barely dabbling with my trainer in terms of just sort of understanding GTO concepts for heads up. And then obviously, since then I've put in a lot of work on it. So feel better about my game, despite losing to somebody where I was minus $1.50 in all 3 matches and happened to lose all 3 matches.
So you mentioned streaming. You've been streaming all week, a couple of deep runs in the $800 double chance and the 5K 6 max. And you min cashed, I believe. Did you min cash in the double chance? You did in the 5K 6 max, right? You cashed in that one.
Cashed in both of those, yeah.
Oh, you cashed in both. Okay. But there was a hand that I saw I believe it was the 5 or the double chance, right? It was the $800 double chance.
The 5 ticket chance.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah, I had a coin flip there and I lost. So it was you're under the gun +1 with pocket threes and 17 bigs. And it's folded to you. There's one person under the gun, folds. And you open shove the 17 with the threes. And you're pretty, I watched the stream. You're pretty sure about it. I was wondering, first off, before we get to what happened, sort of the general thought process there is, I think you were saying it would suck to open for 2.5 and then get shoved on and have to fold kind of thing. Is that, that's pretty standard, the shove for 17 bigs there?
There's no question by any stretch of the imagination that jamming with threes there is a profitable play. You do win big blinds with that move. Here's the issue, right? So you're already in the money, right? And you're like, the pay jumps are minimal. I think I was in it paid like 72 spots and there was like 48 or 49 left, right? And here's the other key factor. It's 6 max, right? We're not talking about 9 max, because 9 max, you raise under the gun +1 with the threes for 17 bigs. It's a little bit of, it's probably not that bad, but it's a little slightly punchy because there's just too many people stacked behind you. But with 6 max, you have to be more aggressive. What you also find in 6 max, right, is you get 3-bet a lot more often, right? People are going to take ace-9 and stuff and 3-bet you with these hands, right? So when if let's say, for example, if you open with threes to 2 blinds and then someone shoves on you, you have a really bad hand to call with. Like the types of hands you want to open and call jams with are like big pair, like aces, kings, queens, ace, king, ace, queen, even ace, jack is borderline. Like you're opening those hands to induce, really. You want to get shoved on by weaker hands. 2 threes, unfortunately, is just way too vulnerable, right? But then there's another issue, and I was actually explaining this to Mike Matusow. I was trying. I don't know why. I was trying to explain the math because he was like, can't you just open fold the threes? I was like, it's 6 max. I'm trying to win also, right? And then it comes around, and we'll get to the second part of the hand. It folds around to Nikita Bojakowski, who's a top high roller player. He's on about 40 blinds at the time, and it's 16 more big blinds to him, and he has king queen suited. So first off, I want to ask you and Terrence, what would you do with king queen suited there?
I've already cheated. I looked up the answer in the shove or fold. I'll let Adam do it.
17. It's 17 big blinds, and I have 40, and it's king queen, and you raised under the gun. I'm probably going to call. Don't love it, but I'm probably going to call.
Okay, so this is a really interesting one to break down because I did it for Matusow, right? Here's the unique thing, and I think actually, when you look up the solve, Terrence, you can actually make an even bigger case for call, and I'll tell you exactly why, right? When you look up the solve, you're looking up the solve that includes me possibly having aces, kings, queens, ace, king, ace, queen, right? That's 36 combinations, right? That you can actually erase that top of my range because aces, kings, queens, ace, king, ace, queen, as I said, 36 combinations. I don't jam with those hands. That's not in my jamming range, right? So when you have king, queen suited and you see a 17 big blind jam, unfortunately, and this is something that has made me think about it, the most likely hand that does that for profit is pocket threes, fours, pocket deuces through sevens, right? Maybe eights you don't mind getting, 3-bet jammed with. Nines is probably, safe to say that's true. So when you're Makita and you're looking at the situation now, it's 16 big blinds to call, right? And you win 19.5, right? So you're actually getting a price, right? So you really only need about 45% equity to make this call correct. And it's a very small thing. And old school tournament players are like, bro, you don't need to flip or whatever. But at this stage of the tournament, you're not worried about, the laddering or anything like that. So it's as simple as this. It's a math problem where you're risking 16 big blinds to win 19.5. And most importantly, you can narrow your opponent's range down to small pocket pairs. Now, if people are jamming correctly in that spot for 17 big blinds, it makes king queen more difficult. But as Terrence looked up, it's still okay. So it made me think about that spot. And I was like, wow, my hand is so face up here when I do this. So what hands can I add to my shoving range for 17 bigs that punish the king, queen, king, jack calls, right? And I thought about, obviously having ace 4 suited, ace 5 suited, ace 3 suited, because those have a lot of equity against hands that will call you, whether they're pocket pairs or bigger aces or obviously king, queen suited. But even then, ace 4 suited against king, queen suited, you're not that big a favorite, right? So overall, I still think king, queen suited, as you said, Terrence, I'm pretty sure you looked it up and it said it's a call.
Yeah.
You can just call and it's fine. but it's even more of a call when you can narrow your opponent's range so much so to like they just always have a small fucking pair here. It's similar to the hand that I called David Coleman when he jammed for 19 bigs and we were heads up and I had king 10 offsuit and I called him because he just fucking always has a little pair there. That's what people do. So it's interesting to see how like, you know, poker theory in the future will go about these specific situations where you're essentially capping your range to a certain degree, or will you uncap it now by start jamming 17 bigs with fucking pocket aces? I don't know.
Well, I think the sort of funny thing is, first, I think actually Mike was right that the threes is a fold 6-handed under the gun, but I'll double check that. I think
+1 under the gun +1.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so I think I saw that it was 5s plus, but it might be yeah, fair. I do have to ask you though, but because of this, he shouldn't be able to make this exploit, right? So you should actually, if you are going to 2x with aces, kings, etc., you also have to be able to min raise with some part of your range that you're willing to fold, right? So that's going to be, I guess, like small suited kings. And I know you know that. I just wanted to like make sure that the people are aware, because otherwise it's such a simple strategy. It's like, well, if Daniel min raises, like then he just, you know, he's got like a hand that he's willing to call it off with. But when you're min raising, you also have a hand that you're willing to fold with. It should be clear like that people.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the reason, like, I just wanted to interject here and I'll let you finish. But like, there's a whole group of hands like that you mentioned. Let's say like Jack 9 suited, 9-10 suited, where you're going to open and then fold to a jam. The problem with threes is like you open, you're going to get jammed on in spots where you like, you know, you're flipping and you're forced to fold in these spots. Whereas if you jam first, like, you know, it puts your opponent in much more difficult positions to do that. So like threes just actually puts you in a mathematical quandary to some degree, because you raise 2 and now a guy's shoving range says you're actually, you know, you're never doing great calling it off with that hand. Whereas
I have the 15 big blind 5-handed like open shoving. So the open shoves actually look like ace 8 suited, ace 5 suited, king jack suited, king 10 suited, ace queen off. A few other suited broadways, and we'll go over them all. 5s, 4s, and then 3s, not all the time, but some of the time. So that's like a sort of balanced range. And then so you have your like open raises, things that you mentioned. You've exactly mentioned Jack 9 suited, Queen 8 suited, King 7 suited. Like these are the hands that you're going to 2x and fold, so that they can't just like, you know, they can't just know that you have a big pair when you 2x it.
So what's a fold? If King Queen's a call for Makita, what's a fold there?
Let me do that real quick. I got it up for 15 big blinds because it's a little more convenient. But deuce is a fold, ace 8 is a fold about half the time. King 9 suited is a fold, king jack is a fold, queen jack is a fold, queen 10 suited is a fold.
King jack's a fold. King jack suited is a fold.
Queen jack off. King jack off is a fold. King jack suited and king 10 suited.
But again, what's important, right, when we do this, right? Because we understand
if we're removing aces and kings, that's different. Now we get to call with a bunch more stuff.
This is what's really great about theory and learning theory, and that's why, like, I'm actually dabbling in my friend's book, Modern Poker Theory. Talks about some of this stuff. Is like when you figure out some stuff that your opponent does incorrectly, it allows you to just really maximally exploit. And this is a perfect example because I'm pretty sure Makita knows me well enough to know that my range is just not going to be balanced here, and it's just so heavily small pairs that what you can do is you can start widening your calling range now. Right.
Conversely, some guys will shove with kings there. Like some guys in your spot, they'll look down at 2 kings and they'll just shove 16 big blinds. And if you know that guy's doing that, then you overfold, right?
He knows that I'm not.
Yeah.
He knows that I'm not. So essentially, let's say, for example, if you knew for a fact that your opponent had deuces, 3s, 4s, 5s, 6s, or 7s, right? In this spot, risking 16 bigs to win 19.5, you can call with 9-10 offsuit.
Right.
I mean, you could, in theory, right? Like, and it sounds crazy, but like, that's where you get some of the edges in poker. First of all, when you understand the theory and understand what is the board, like what is the Nash equilibrium of what I should call, and then you add in, okay, but this player's range is too tight, too loose, it's too this heavy or too that heavy. That's where the real edge comes in for a lot of the younger players who play tournaments online. It's not simply they're all trying to follow. I mean, at the highest levels, they are for the most part. They're not simply trying to make the indifferent play, right? The one that's like whatever, forcing zeros, indifference. They're actually looking for spots where they can exploit. And in that spot, I think Makita, I mean, whatever, I think he's going to call anyway.
It's a call anyway, but... Yeah.
But especially like against me in that spot, like I'm just so heavy. I'm just always going to have a small little pair there.
Yeah, I mean, the important thing is to remember that we're exploiting on the margins, right? Like it's like you brought up the example of calling with 10-9 offsuit because this guy is going to shove with small pairs. Like that's not really what you want to do, because you only have to be wrong like 1 out of 20 times about this guy's range. And then it's just a fucking epic disaster because this guy wakes up with pocket tens and you have 10-9 suited and 10-9 offsuit and you're just completely fucked. So, exploit at the margins. And that's why when people talk about this GTO versus exploitive stuff, it's like, that you can throw this GTO stuff out the window. I'm playing the player. It's like, you have to have a baseline to begin with. Adam asked the right question. Like Adam asked, like, what's okay if you're calling with king queen, like what are you folding with? Are you still calling king jack? And the answer is no, unless again this guy's overshoving. If this guy's overshoving his small cards, then yes, you would call with king jack. If you can safely remove aces, kings, queens, jacks from his range and ace king, then absolutely call with king jack. But
what's interesting what you're saying too is because like poker theory in its infancy existed forever in the sense of like what we used to do is this: we'd say, all right, I'm up against Terrence calls way too often, or Terrence doesn't call enough, right? What am I basing that on? The baseline that I've decided is enough, right? So I've sort of decided that's not calling enough and that's calling too much. Now we have software that, AI that's played against each other to tell us exactly where that line is, right? So understanding and learning that line, now we can actually create our strategies much more precisely than in the past. But everyone's always done that, right? You play at a table and you're like, oh, the tight guy raised under the gun, right? So you're like, okay, I fold, right? Or I call, because you know that they're playing too tight. If they were playing balanced in your mind, then you would have to just, again, force zeros, if you will, and play as normal. So that sort of thought process has always been something that people did exploitatively from a baseline, but the difference now is that the baseline that we had in our own mind was just kind of what we made up. We didn't have like concrete evidence of like, this is the baseline, right? And now we've learned things like minimum defense frequency, which I also tried to explain to Mike Matusow, and that was very different. I tried to use the very simple one. I've ever done. You guys, like the aces, kings, queens game? Yeah. Oh, you know this one, Adam?
No.
Okay, so the aces, kings, queens game is this, right? Your opponent has aces or queens. It's the river. The board is deuce, 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 3-3, right? He either has aces or queens, okay? And you have 2 kings, okay? So your opponent either has aces or they have queens. And they have it like 50-50. 50% of the time aces, 50% of the time queens, okay? If your opponent bets $100, which is the pot, right? How often so you're getting 2-to-1 odds, right? How often should you call with the king?
100% of the time.
Terrence, you want to take that?
I'm sorry. If you're calling 100% of the time, we can just counter exploit you by only betting aces.
That's true too. It's also the wrong answer, but that's actually very, very
I'm just trying to say like that can't be the right answer because we just always bet with aces. Like you have to assume that I'm going to make adjustments over time, right?
Oh, sorry. I thought.
So like, what's the calling frequency? What's the calling frequency where I cannot profit from you? Is I think Daniel's question.
But you're actually still losing money by calling 100% of the time.
No, but if you're saying that I'm getting 2-to-1 and it's a 50-50 coin flip, and you're going to bet queens and aces at the same frequency.
No, we're not going to bet the aces and queens at the same frequency.
So that's
I'm the first player. I get to decide like how frequently I'm going to bet aces and how frequently I'm going to bet queens. What is the calling frequency such that it doesn't matter what I do? Is I believe the question, Daniel?
Say again.
If how often should Adam call so that it doesn't matter what the other guy does? Like how often he bets the aces or queens, right? So that the first guy cannot make a profit.
Oh yeah. So basically, like how often should you call to maximize your own EV, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What is the most plus EV thing to do?
So you're saying GTO versus exploitive, where I'm supposed to, if it's exploitive.
If there's no exploiting going on here. It's just like this person,
right?
50% of the time is going to show up with aces. 50% of the time is going to show up with queens.
Wow. So I guess I'm exploited by nature. So I'm going to say, well, it depends on what I think this guy will do with queens and aces on the river, and how often I'll call him.
And that's all your brain's going off the track now.
Yeah.
Because now you're starting to think about, no, this is it. This is a computer, and this computer 50% of the time is going only with aces. 50% of the time it's doing it with queens.
Okay. Well, my answer's wrong. What's the right answer?
Well, here's the thing. The right answer is actually 50%. Because here's the thing. If you, let's say, for example, if you call with the kings 52% of the time, right? If you do that, in theory, right, I can complete, let's say you did that without adjusting, right? I could now never bluff, never, and just always bet aces and check my queens. And 52% of the time I get paid and I fucking print, right? Or vice versa. If you say, for example, you know, you're folding 55% of the time. Now I should take my queens and bet those 100% of the time. Not actually, because as Terrence pointed out, humans notice this, right? So one of the cool things about exploiting people is when you're doing it, you don't want them to know. It's that whole rock, paper, scissors thing, right? Because once you start to see it, you're like, fuck, this guy, he keeps betting. Like imagine you said you were going to call with the kings, right? And the first 10 times you say, I'm calling every time. First 10 times he shows you aces. You're going to go, hold on a minute. So now what you get to do is counter exploit him, right? Because now you can fold it every time. And unless he adjusts, you know, you're going to be printing EV that way. So anyway, I don't know why we came up, but yeah, the minimum difference frequency is really, really important, especially in these tournament situations, because there are a lot of spots when you're on 20 big blinds or whatever, where if you open the button, okay, for a min raise, and the big blind knows that you open too wide, right? He can go all in with any two fucking cards and print EV. There's like there's an algorithm where like if you open excessively wide for two bigs and you have 20, he can jam 20 every time. So
well, what if you call really wide though? What if that guy calls really wide?
If the player who opens wide but calls really wide? Well, if they call really wide, then you can actually exploit them from that perspective by just jamming all your plus EV hands.
If they widen their range too much, then you will actually, as the original opener, win too much money, right? Like, or win money from them, right? So the most extreme example is, let's say I'm opening the top 70% of my hands on the button, which would be an insane number, but let's say I did. And then the guy in the big blind was just like, Terrence is opening too wide. I'm going to shove 100% of my hands here. I'm going to shove 3 deuce off. Well, I mean, just like algorithmically, all I have to do is like call like just a reasonable percentage of the time, and then all of a sudden I just wake up with equity, right? Like I just make too much money there. So yes, Adam's absolutely right. Like if you also call wide, you are then counter exploiting. Your original two plays are in a vacuum wrong. Like you shouldn't be opening 70% of your hands, and you shouldn't be calling it off with whatever 55% of those hands. But this strategy happens to make money versus that exploitation, right?
Right.
But
so yeah, just to interject too, because I think what Adam, I wanted to just touch, this is what we were saying, is like, if this guy opens too much, right? In theory, he's opening way too wide. He's supposed to fold way more because he has too many hands on the button, right? Mm-hmm. If he doesn't, well, he's playing badly for a different perspective. But in theory, like you said, like go all the way. If someone opens 100% of the buttons, 7 deuce offsuit or whatever, the big blind goes all in for 20, he's supposed to fold 7 deuce, right? Maybe you're saying he's one of those players that doesn't. And if that's the case, well, he's just really, really bad. And now you can just pure value on him, right? So even if he folds too much, which he's supposed to, you print EV when he folds. If he calls way too much, you print EV by just charging him when you have an above average hand. When every time you have queen 9 suited, you go all in. You're like, all right, fuck it. This guy's calling me with 7 deuce off, you know? So anyway, the important thing though, and that's where the statistics come in. That's why within GG Poker, I think it's really worthwhile to look at. Within the site, we have what's called the Smart HUD, right? So not only do you get to see the person's VPIP, which means how many hands they're playing, and not only do you see how often they raise for the flop, you also get to see this important stat called ATS. That's what it's listed as. It's attempts to steal. And what that'll show you when you click on the player's name is how often this player raises in the cutoff, the button, and the small blind, right? So now, if you're in the big blind and the button raises and you look and this guy's fucking stealing like 90% of the hands, or he's like opening a ton from there, right? And you pick up A7, stick it in, all of it, right? However, if you look at the guy's attempts to steal and it's like 12%, it's really low, and you pick A7 offsuit and you got 20 bigs, that's not a jam, right? So this is where like poker really still remains fun. Everyone's trying to learn to perfect, but part of learning to perfect or be the best player you can be is understanding that sort of the game theory approach isn't necessarily the one that always garners you the highest EV. Right? If you choose to never exploit your opponents in this way, you can. You'll make money. Because every time you play GTO, you can't lose money, right? You can't be exploited. And your opponents, like the weaker they play, the more you can gain that way. But there are going to be spots where you gain even more EV by going, oh, no. I'm not going to play GTO. I'm going to actually play exploitative in this.
So that ATS, is that every hand that you play with the player, or is that every hand the player plays?
Every opportunity they have first in. So if somebody else is raised and they're the button, that doesn't count. But if everyone folds them in the cutoff or the button and the small blind, and they choose to raise from there, that's considered an attempt to steal. Right?
Okay, but is
So
it
Adam's asking, I think,
that you only hands that you played against him, or every hand he played on the site?
It tracks all of them, right? So
Wow.
yeah, so basically so the database collects. Like sometimes I'll sit down at a table and I'm like, oh, look on this guy. I've already got 400 hands with him from another tournament, and his ATS is X, Y, and it is what it is, and I have that information on the player long term.
Oh wait, so it's 400 hands against him that you played, not that he played against.
No, 400 hands that I was at the table with him.
Right. Okay. So that was my question.
Let's 5, or let's say it's 4. We're playing a game, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to play. We play. We have stats against each other.
Right.
Next
hands
time,
where you were both dealt in, I think is the phrasing we're looking for. Adam was saying, I think Adam was asking, like, if it's all this tracks from all time. So if I sat down at a table with you, Daniel, would I have 150,000 hands worth of stats? No, because we haven't played 150,000 hands together.
Oh, right. That's what you're saying. So yeah, it's you don't have access to a full database. That would be ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
It's basically like every time you play, I thought you meant hands against that player. Right?
No,
hands
I
you
meant
both
hands
dealt
he
in.
played, yeah.
If you were both dealt in, so it's like a poker tracker back in the day, for those who remember.
But what I love about it is, and I think this is important to note too, because I want to throw this out there just for anybody who's like unclear. GG Poker's absolute terms of service is this: you are not allowed to use any third-party software to aid you in any way. Period. None. Part of that is we give you plenty. We give you the HUD and the stats within there, right? So what does that mean? That means you can't use any other tracking software. You are not allowed to use pre-flop charts or anything like that, right? And a lot of people might say, well, yeah, but people can still do this pen and paper. Like, how do you catch them, right? Well, I mean, jaywalking is illegal, right? It's an illegal act, right? Most people don't get caught jaywalking, but it doesn't mean that we should just say, fuck it, it's legal. So it does, so the bottom line is this, is like, if you were in a gray area or you think you're doing something that you shouldn't be, you probably are, right? That's the official rule. And if evidence comes to surface that you are doing any of those things, you face potential repercussions.
So I want to quickly just go back. Sorry, Terrence. I want to quickly go back to the hand, and I want to ask you, Daniel, how so in that spot, pocket threes, 17 big blinds. Are you randomizing there with your hands? Like, so do you actually do shove with aces, ace, king, kings, queens? Do you also have that in your range, or is there just you're never doing that with that hand?
Yeah, so that's why I said, I think Makita knows that I just never have any of those hands, because those hands here's the thing, those hands play better as an open to induce, right? You open with those hands because you actually want to invite action, right? You don't want to lose people. A hand like threes, or maybe like ace 10 suited or something like that, or ace jack even, like those hands you can put in, I would put more in my jam. So I would say this, I could have ace jack, I could have ace 10, I could have some ace 9s, ace 5 suited, ace 4 suited. So I'm actually going to expand it a little bit, especially because of the fact that I'm actually playing to win, right? But it is an interesting spot in terms of when I thought about it, I'm like, Jesus, when somebody jams 18 big blinds, do they ever not have 2 fucking 5s or 2 4s or 2 3s? It's always that hand, right? Because it's kind of dumb, frankly. It's kind of dumb to jam 17 bigs with aces, even though, because what? I mean, you just minimize.
I mean, back in the early 2000s, they always did an ace king when they did that.
Yeah, exactly, right?
So, but that's the thing, way poker's evolved, right? They didn't have threes back then; they had ace king.
Yeah. So you want to give people the opportunity to have fold equity when you have ace king, right? So you raise with ace king. You want them to go all in with ace 9. If you go all in first, they probably fold the ace 9, so you don't get any of that action. So in order to build chips, you kind of want to use those hands and put that in your more, I guess, polarized range where you open for min raise with really strong hands, and some, like Terrence was saying, it's important to have hands where you're opening to fold. Like, for example, queen jack offsuit, right? Maybe you open that hand there, right? Somebody jams, you got to fold, right? You need hands like that as well as having the top hands. The question is, should you be more balanced when you jam 17 big blinds? And I think the answer is yes against really good players, because really good players like Makita, again, that one is probably too obvious because it's just a call anyway. But I really believe Makita is smart enough and strong enough to know that he can condense my range down to freaking boom, small pool. And
I think it's also important to know that 17 probably is the upper limit of which you'll shove anything. I think once you get to 20, you're probably only min raising, and you no longer have an open shove range.
That's true. I think it also, one thing that's important too in this whole equation, and the reason you do it, is it makes a huge difference that you're playing 6-max, right? 6-max forces you to
with a big blind ante, right? I assume
with a big blind, yeah, basically 0.08 of a big blind.
Yeah.
So so it's pretty big. So yeah, but it essentially, because of that, like when you're playing 6-max, you have to get involved more, and you just can't wait as often. Like a hand like 3s, 9-handed, maybe you say, all right, wait for a better spot or min raise to fold or whatever that may be. So then the question is, what gives you the highest EV with 3s? Is it min raising and then folding to a jam, or hoping to steal the blinds, or playing a pot against the big blind where the flop's usually not going to be all that favorable for you? Or is it jamming the 17 big blinds? I think if you run the two options, right? Min raising with the 3s versus jamming, I think, and we could run this, you can later, I think you're going to show, in terms of playability post-flop, you're going to show a higher profit by jamming the 17. And if they call, they call. Because here's the thing. In theory, from a Nash perspective, you're not making a mistake, right? But when you min raise, you open up the possibility where you can make a ton of mistakes. You could fold incorrectly. If someone moves in for 7 bigs, you might fold. Or like you can get outplayed post-flop. You might not realize the equity with the 3s. The flop comes Jack 9 8. Right? The guy checks, let's say you bet, I don't know, and he calls. What do you lose, you end up, it's a very difficult hand to play post flop. So some of those spots, some of those hands, you just, even for 17 bigs, you just have a higher EV by jamming than you would by min raising.
There was another hand I noticed, and I think it was in the double chance, and I'll probably get this wrong, but you were in the big blind with, I believe it was ace-4 diamonds. And this is near the end of the tournament. You're in the money, I believe. Guy raises sort of under the gunish with ace-queen off. No, I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right. It was ace-5 of diamonds, yeah.
Okay, ace-5 of diamonds. Okay.
I was lamenting how annoying this hand was.
Okay, I thought you were shaking your head because I was wrong again. But okay, so he's got ace-queen. He raises. You call in the big blind. The flop comes 10-10-3, I believe. 2 diamonds.
I remember the hand. So the guy raises, like I call with the ace-5 of diamonds in the big blind. It comes 10-10-4 with 2 diamonds. I check. He bets small. Okay. And this is where I would mix with enough flush draw. Sometimes I'm going to check raise. Sometimes I'm going to check call. I decide to check raise small here. He calls. Now the turn card is an off 9. And I have a pot size bet left, which is about 14 bigs, 12 bigs. I have 12 bigs into 14 or something. Right around pot. I jam the turn. He tanks for a little bit and he calls me with ace queen. Okay. Now, So I don't know. I'm going to ask you, why do you think he called? Why do you think he called with that specific ace queen?
I didn't see the suits to his hand, but I guess probably he didn't have diamonds. Yeah, he doesn't have diamonds. Yeah,
right.
so
as a diamond, right? Like he blocks a lot of the combos that he wants me to have.
But how often? I guess what I'd ask you is, how often are you check raising a 10 there? Because you're not check raising a 3.
Right. Well, I'm going to be balanced there. I'm check raising a 10. A decent amount there. I think the problem for him a little bit is that 9 on the turn is probably not that good, because now either I've picked up even additional equity, right, where I've also got a straight draw. So that's his best case scenario, is that I need to catch a pair, any one of my pair, diamonds or straight, right? That's his best case scenario, where I have a shit ton of equity. Or his worst case scenario is I've actually hit the 9, right? And now he has, 4 outs because he can't hit the ace of diamonds or the queen of diamonds. Or the other part of the equation, which is I actually have a 10 and he's drawing dead, right? or this. Or I slow played aces or kings, which could be a thing too, because he did raise from early. Sometimes I'm going to have aces, kings, and queens in my range. So
I was going to ask what the rest of your value range look like, because it can't just be 10x because there's just not enough 10x. So I was going to ask what the rest of your value range looks like. That's part of the answer.
Well, it's a 9 now, right? So on the turn, it's a 9 now.
Yeah.
Because now if I have 9s in a diamond draw, I'm like YOLO. Whatever.
But what were the 9s on the flop that you check raise with? I guess like Jack 9 with the backdoor flush draw. Is that?
No, I'm saying, what if I had like Jack 9 of diamonds on the flop? Right?
Oh, okay.
It was an off 9, right?
Yeah.
It was an off 9. So like literally, if I had 9 deuce of diamonds or whatever, any 9,
right,
9 of diamond flush draw, I've made a pair. And also, like I said, the other value hands, like you said, are important. Is I don't have a 4. That's not a thing. I'm not check raise bombing a 4, right? So the other possibilities are slow played aces, kings, and queens occasionally, depending on the stack sizes and the depths.
And so what do you think of his call with ace queen there?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
I don't think it's good. I think here's the thing. So here's the thing. We talk about minimum defense frequency, right? If he's facing a pot size bet, right? So he needs to essentially defend here, like 50% of his range for the most part, right? Is ace queen off in the top 50% of his range that bets the flop, calls the check raise? I don't think it is from under the gun +1.
Yeah.
I don't think it is from under the gun +1. I think, and because it's eight-handed as well, right?
Because he should have all his big pairs, yeah.
He has all his pairs. He has ace king as well. He has a 10, right? He has a 9 himself sometimes when he has the 9 of diamonds in flush draw.
Right.
He has pocket 4s. So he has like, a pretty, I don't think it lands. I think it's smart of him to not have a diamond, right? If you're going to split ace queen, if you're going to call, let's say you're going to call sometimes with ace queen and sometimes with not, then you would call the times you have ace queen without the diamond and fold when you have the diamond.
Constructive hand to put through the solver. I have a trouble with playing your position on these sort of paired board flop because I know you're supposed to check raise like a wide variety of flush draws. I'm not actually sure which flush draws you're supposed to check raise here because I know you're supposed to do something. Because if you check raise all your flush draws, that's overblock. Like you're doing it wrong. You can't project. But how are you selecting which flush draws on a 10-10
well,
4?
Generally speaking, the flush draws that you want to do that with are the ones that have no showdown value, right? Not typically the ones that are like ace high. So not the one that I chose. So yeah. I'd rather have it'd be better to do it with like the 8-9 of diamonds or the 5-6 of diamonds, where you have backdoors as well, where you have no showdown equity than the ace-5. Having said that, ace-5 doesn't have a ton of showdown value against an under +1 range that calls a check raise on the flop. Because what hand is that? King, queen, king, jack. So it's kind of the same spot, right? It'd be different if it was a button raise. If the button raises, calls a check raise. Now ace high has a lot more showdown value. So against the button raise, I would put ace-5 into like a hand that does have showdown value.
That's the calling, yeah.
Against under the gun +1, pretty much all my flush draws don't have showdown value, unless they, yeah. So.
Yep. Terrence, you're allowed to play in the GG Poker Series. Have you dipped your? I know you did play the limit hold'em, correct?
I did play the limit hold'em. I stick to what I know how to do, but I just I don't study poker. Like I know enough poker. Like Daniel talked about this, half an hour ago. Where the poker theory has always been around, and I think I'm good at that side of the game. Like I understand, what I'm supposed to ask here, but I just don't know because the only way to know now is to live kind of in the solver world and to really study, like to really look at these questions. What are the threshold questions? Like Daniel's answer to what should he be calling with on the turn? So on this question, so that you're the other guy. Daniel Negreanu has just defended under the gun. He's check raised the 10-10 4-2 diamond flop, and he's put you in on the 9x turn. You're supposed to have an idea of where the threshold is, and you're supposed to be close, like a lot of the time, right? So Daniel doesn't think ace queen is a call. Like we'd have to run it through the solver. Daniel's probably not 100% sure that it's not a call, but that's what he thinks. But his line is probably it's close and it's calibrated, right? Like he's not going to be way off. It's not going to turn out that like ace-7 offsuit is a call here. Like there's just no way, right? But what poker is now is making decisions over and over that are as close to correct as you can as a human, because unless you're actually cheating, which we just talked about, you're not going to know the right answer 100% of the time. But these guys who play so much poker, they're getting so well calibrated. And Daniel is in this class because he's worked so hard, especially with the Poke Challenge, but also outside of that, is that I think everybody's just closer to this than me. And even though I understand the theory around it, I don't know if I can execute well enough for 8 hours without really going on the grind and studying. It would have to be like a workout plan. I'd have to really get in the lab and just like play with the solver all the time, really understand and really just know this stuff. Because like even the previous hand, when we talked about the 15 big blinds, like I know now that king queen offsuit is a call from 17 big blinds, but I didn't know that an hour ago. I mean, and there's a lot of study that goes into it, and I just haven't had the time to commit to it, and I feel like I'd be a little bit behind. But
okay, so what I'll ask then, Daniel, you're in the streets playing in these tournaments, specifically the online events. Do you think Terrence is overestimating the competition? Or yeah, you ran into Makita in this spot, but if you're playing $800 buy-ins or $1,000 buy-ins, is he overvaluing or overestimating the competition?
No, I don't. I think he's got an accurate understanding or realization that even at the smaller levels, like there are going to be a lot of players who are playing and studying. There's going to be professionals. Having said that, what he has to say applies a lot more to a 5K or a 10K than it does to like the $200 buy-in events. When you have fields of 2,000, 3,000 players, obviously, there's going to be a lot more people clicking buttons than in the higher buy-in events. But overall, if you think of the golden era, in 2003 or 4 or whatever, poker, when the gold rush, and you compare it to now, the average guy who put in $100 back then, no shot, right? No clue. They didn't no idea what he was doing, right? Today, what you notice is that your average player, even at those limits, like still plays within a construct or a system that makes some sense. Like you just don't see a lot of guys as much randomly limping in with King 4 suited under the gun, like we used to see all the time.
Or just like what we were talking about before, like having 22 big blinds and shoving with ace king offsuit because he's scared and he doesn't want to see a flop. Like you're not going to see it.
You'll see that if you have tell me.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about like the Colossus at the live World Series, like of course I'm going to be a favorite in that. If we're talking about those tournaments, that's different. But I think online is a different animal. People are playing tough. Obviously, there's still going to be lots of fish in, especially I think in something like the GG World Series of Poker, where people are bracelet chasing and they're playing for the value, the thrill of trying to win a World Series bracelet. I think it's different than something like a Tuesday night $100 buy-in on Poker Stars, which is going to be really just people trying to grind it out and work hard.
I will say this though, even like at the highest levels or mid levels, like there's going to be the top clippers, right? Which, Terrence is like, okay, they're better than me, right? But if you're in like the tier underneath them, right, there's still enough juice and value in these tournaments where you're still doing well, right? Like I think so. Because I mean, as much as I said, people are better or whatever, there's still a bunch of like action. Like GG Poker has really good games. We have we just have so many people entering these tournaments, and they're not all professional. They're predominantly like casual recreational players who just love playing the software because it's so damn fun. And so I think if there's 3,000 players in a field and there's 100 crushers who are better than you, so what? You're hardly gonna engage with them, right? And they can run into landmines, and just because they exist in the tournament doesn't mean that you're not going to be profitable.
The main event is sort of like that, right? Like the main event in Las Vegas is like you will absolutely be in the field with the 500 best no limit hold'em tournament players in the world because they're pretty much all going to play it. On the other hand, there's also going to be like 3,000 people who barely.
And how often do they win it? Not that often.
Yeah, well, and there's only 500 of them, and there's 7,500 of the rest of them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So like everyone has a fighting chance, even though there's like 500 amazing geniuses or whatever. The final table of the World Series main event every year, we're like, who the hell is this guy? Who's this guy? And they're usually pretty good in some cases, but then you have the John Hesps who just come out of nowhere from a $10 tournament all the way to 4th in the main event. There's always going to be stories like that because there's a lot of luck in poker, frankly. I mean, there really is. So no matter how good somebody plays, eventually it's going to come down to like, you have jacks, Adam has ace king, your money goes in, and one of you will survive.
Let's flip the coin.
Yeah.
I want to ask about GG Poker's ClubGG because it's interesting. This is a sort of a subscription-based poker model. You think back to the free poker days of 10 years ago, where all the sites had .net versions, and people would go on there and they get play chips, and they wouldn't really mean anything because people are donking around with play chips and reloading and goofing around. So any of my buddies back in the day who were playing on the free sites would always be like, that's not real poker. Everybody just jams and it's stupid. But this is a different version. So this is subscription based. It's $50 a month. You pay. And for that $50,
there's actually, that's not the only option, right? So it's like no purchase necessary. There's
right.
two. You can say, because here's the thing, I get this question all the time, and we have for a long time. People have actually, asked us in the emails, like, what's a good site to play with my friends? And I don't have an answer for them. But now I do. Because now, if you just have your buddies and we might do this amongst ourselves and do something together with this, you go to ClubGG, you can set up your own tournaments, your own games for free, no charge. You have your own invites, you have your own little club, if you will, and that has nothing to do with the subscription model. And then you can do that all on ClubGG. Then what you're talking about is, of course, the $49.9 a month, which is subscription-based, which opens you up to two things. Well, actually, to two things. Yeah, every month, there's $100,000 given away in prizes. In addition,
$100,000?
$100,000 a month.
A month.
$100,000 a month, yeah. In addition to that, right now, I think your last chance to get the stage 3 will be August 22nd. Right now, for this, you pay $50. People have already qualified for the main event of the World Series of Poker, the $10,000 main event of the World Series of Poker. There are 3-step process. You play the step 1s, right? Then you can play the step 2s. If you make the step 2, you make the final. If you make the stage 3 and you finish in the top 3, this next one will be on August 22nd. So you got a week to do this.
August 15th. August 15th, there's one, right?
I know there's, yeah. Oh, that's right. There's one on the 15th, which will be
there's 3 seats on August 15th, four on August 22nd.
4 on August 22nd. So you can actually, for $50, right, $49.99, you can actually win your way into the main event. And it doesn't cost you any more than that. What I kind of like about the subscription model is like, this isn't a spot where you're going to get buried, right? You're in for 50. That's it, right? And each month, with $100,000 in prizes being given away every single month, the chances of you cashing for something are pretty damn high. What ClubGG is going to do, it's going to revolutionize live tournaments. It's actually a game changer because we're going to partner with live events across the globe, and we're going to offer ClubGG as an option for people to qualify to get to these events. So we're going to pump more people into the live events, and it's going to be like a fun way for people that are outside the jurisdiction of being able to play on GG Poker, which sucks, right? I get it. We're trying to get licensed everywhere in the world, but for now, if you are in a region and you miss playing some poker, I've had friends, and I'm not literally text me like, I love this. He's like, I can't stop playing this. It's so much fun. Because again, until you've played the GG software, you don't know, like, you've never experienced what I'm talking about when it's just like such a enjoyable experience. And if you are now somebody who wants to play on ClubGG, and like I said, if you're not ready to put the $49.99 a month in for subscription, no problem. Set up a game with your buddies. Get used to the software, and then if you want to take part, you want to play for a little money, you go for it. Because this is like I said, I really think it's going to be a game changer.
What if we set up a DAT Poker Podcast League on GG?
I was thinking about that. I was literally thinking about that. Like before we talked, I was like, we should do something where maybe I'll have to find out because you got to think about the legalities of it, right? Because some states or some countries don't allow for sweepstakes because that's essentially what this is, right? It's a sweepstake model. It's not a gambling site.
Yeah.
You're not gambling. You're paying, and you're paying into a sweepstakes. So that's legal in a lot of places. There are a couple places it isn't. So you might want to make sure you check with your local, local state rules or local, country rules. But for the vast majority of people, they'll be able to play on clubgg.net, $49.99 a month. Just, and again, you have entry into like all these step satellites for the main event, and then we're going to have a bunch more going forward.
But the league we could do without the subscription model, right? You said in the free part, we could just do it in the normal free part.
Totally. Absolutely. I just want to make sure that if I give away a prize, that's legal.
Oh, I see. Right.
So let's say, for example, DAT Poker Podcast, all right? We're going to do a league, and then the winner gets a seat in the main event, courtesy of me, right? Let's say we do that. I want to make sure before we go there that, old DNegs is not going to end up next to Big Bubba in a cell or something, right? Always wants to be on the up and up. So, but I'm super excited, like, because I say this all the time, but I genuinely mean it. It's like the experience I have playing on GG is just fun.
Yeah.
Like I get in, there's a guy freaking snap camming me, singing a song. This guy, Raynon Brushki, he's always in there. He's just like, whatever music he's playing, he just comes in. It can be annoying. You can turn him off if you want. And he's just singing like, what is love? Baby, don't hurt me. I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? And then people are using my face to send emojis, and then they'll do the Elky and all this kind of stuff. It's just so interactive and so like fun. And I like the sounds and I like the squeeze. And I know some people hate it and I don't care. But he's like, Jared's like, nah. But at least you have an opinion about it. So it's just a lot of fun. And I want everybody to have a chance to play it. So that's why I'm so excited about clubgg.net, because now literally everyone will have a chance to play on the software.
All right. Quickly, the high stakes duel that I think Daniel probably wants to move on from was Phil Hellmuth played another event, and he played against somebody named Nick Wright. I have no idea who this guy is.
So he's a high stakes crusher, right? Yeah.
Nick Wright. Yeah, he's a random. Anyways, they played, and step one, the 50K buy-in, and Phil Hellmuth won again. So he's what? I don't know. 73 in a row, heads up, he's won, or whatever the heck he says. At least 7 that we've seen on the high stakes duel in a row that he's won. And now he takes on the one and only Tom Dwan in a 100K buy-in is his next opponent, which, of course, they have some history. If you think back to, it was the NBC Heads Up, I believe, where they played, and Phil asked him, or Phil asked Tom if he's going to, we'll see if you're around in 5 years or something like that. Which of course he still is, and whatever. So anyway, it's going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to that one. And if Tom happens to win, if Phil will buck up the 200K to play him a rematch, who knows? We'll see.
No chance.
I didn't want to say it.
Hex predator shit, bro.
And just quickly,
how many times would he have played Nick Wright?
Yeah.
All of them, I imagine.
Probably. But we won't do the drop or anything. But Terrence, you had a tweet with Phil, right?
Oh yeah, I thought it was just funny. He actually retweeted himself. It's like a rare moment of self-awareness, but it's an article from poker.org that says Phil Hellmuth breaks social media ban to tell the world he's on a social media ban. And
that's great.
It's probably the most Phil thing ever. But yeah, the original tweet from Phil is like, he's with my besties for a week and started Friday. They had me on a social media ban, and then it's like a view of like a pool and a vista, and it's.
Well, because Phil does hang around with some, celebrities, right?
Well, especially these Silicon Valley guys. I think the Silicon Valley guys are like the sort of the king of the social media detox because they are the technology guys.
It's them and some other people, right, that are there that don't want their business out there. And Phil, like when he's doing his pictures, he's always got mouth open and hands out like that, right? Like he'll take some pictures and post them, and sometimes some of these guys maybe don't want all their pictures out there, so they put them on a ban. It seems like, but even during a ban, he's
I mean, I can't think of anybody who would pay more to like be off social media, especially the specific type of social media that Phil does, which is like look who I'm hanging out with and look what cool thing I am doing. Like he was doing that long before everybody else did it. The sort of like conspicuous showing. I can't imagine anybody who would be more hurt by it than like
got a hashtag that is hashtag PH Nice Life.
Yeah,
that's the deal.
No. He made his own hashtag about how good his life is.
I just love the guy so much.
He's the gift
so
they keep talking about.
I love it.
What would we talk about on the show?
Even though I can't see, I don't see a social media anymore, but I still just love it because it's great. All right, Roscoe, we have a couple of voicemails, do we? Is that right? Correct?
We do, yeah. Been a long time. Forget where the mail is.
Are they good? Are we gonna give them the gong?
Yeah, actually one's pertinent to what we were just talking about, and another one is a little bit nostalgic, I guess you could say.
Let's hit it. Let's go.
Okay.
Email number
1. Hey, this is from a guy in Jersey that does not want to get banned from WSOP.com. So how many years, or maybe a decade, will it take before WSOP.com and WSOP itself is not the mainstream, tournament, where the basics won't matter as much as, let's say, a WPT or Win event. It's basically the software is garbage compared to GG Poker and other software. They run crappy tournaments for the most. I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about in terms of rake, everything. So how long will that take? All right. Thank you, guys.
Danny, you disguised your voice quite nicely there. I don't know how you did it.
Yeah. No, so a couple things there. First of all, I want to ask, I think it was a two-part question from what I heard, basically. I think the World Series of Poker pretty much for in perpetuity is going to be the brand of all brands from a poker perspective. And part of that is from history, right? From 1970, this thing was around. It's got the weight of, all that going for it. And it's just the one thing the mainstream media knows about. As far as what he was talking about with the site, I understand, totally agree. WSOP.com has not spent a lot of resources. You still can't play PLO on the mobile. It seems like it's sort of plateaued, and they're not really looking to put a lot into it. I would say that, like he said, 5-10. I would bet there'll be an upgrade much sooner than that. So I'm hopeful. Who knows? We'll see.
Really? That's interesting.
I would think that there'll be something happen there because, listen, it's pretty unanimous. Whether it's grinders or casual players, they play on the WSOP side and they're like, meh, meh. You can't even chat. You literally say something to somebody and it just goes ...
Well, that's not software. That's their support staff being lazy and not enforcing chat, because that chat was an ability that they had and they took it away because they didn't even want to fucking bother enforcing chat, which is listen, I did this. This is what I did. I did customer service for PokerStars for Ultimate Gaming. Enforcing chat's a big pain in the ass. It's manual work. It's not work that you can really automate because it needs a real human to look at the context of what was being said one person to another. Did this person deserve a chat ban? So I get it. It's labor intensive, but it's also just it's such a lame way to cut costs. At least what GG does is it does the emojis and stuff. And it's at least it's a way around it. But in terms of your optimism surrounding improving the software, I don't share it. And I mean, I haven't played on
really improving the software necessarily. I mean,
which part of it do you think is going to get like going up? You said upgrade.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, how long are they licensed? You know, like potentially in the future, you know, maybe they could have an upgrade or something like that. I'm talking about new software, not necessarily the software that they're using now. But
yeah, because I think because that's the problem, because it runs on the 888 software platform, right? And that was always going to be a problem with WSOP.com, is that they did not create their own software in house. They're licensing the 888 software, so they don't have. They don't have the means or necessarily even the ability to sort of get in that source code and change it. And every time they do, they have to go through Nevada Gaming Commission or New Jersey. I forget what they're called. The New Jersey equivalent of the Gaming Commission. And all of those things are obstacles. And when they have a monopoly in Nevada, and they don't have a monopoly in New Jersey and these other places, but what they do have, as Daniel mentioned, is a brand. It's going to be really hard for them to change. They essentially would do brand new software or bring in some of these 888 people and work with.
I'll make you a bet. I'll bet you $100 that within 3 years there's an upgrade. 3
years.
Okay, 2 years.
2 years. I mean, sure. Like what constitutes an upgrade? Like PLO on mobile? Like we're going to need.
Well, we can have the arbitrators, which is Adam and Ross, and they can decide, okay, within 2 years, is whatever we're seeing a significant upgrade to what we.
All right, you're on. In fact, I won't even need them. I'll trust you, because you're going to have to play on this thing for every World Series, because you can take some bracelets and stuff like that. And
so you can ask that. We can do a poll and like ask people who.
No. I trust you. 2023, when you're grinding the 2023 World Series, you can go back. I can go back and ask you, like, hey, Daniel, is the software like is it meaningfully better than it was 2 years ago? And I'll trust your honest answer, and I'll pay you the $100 if
I'd like to bet $100 that you guys both forget about this bet.
Oh, I mean, I would bet $1,000 that we both forgot about this. Somebody's going to have to like jump on there and tweet us in the middle of 2023 for either of us to remember.
All right. Voicemail number 2, Roscoe.
Okay.
Email number 2.
Hey guys, this is Mike from Atlantic City, Mike Germanio, and I wanted to leave a voicemail. My grandfather passed away this past Sunday, and he instilled in me growing up my passion for poker. Started with 5-card stud when I was probably 10 years old, and he's an ex-biker, ex-army guy, so he had a lot of backroom games in his life. And you know, growing up with him, I learned to appreciate the game of poker, westerns, and checkers and chess. And I just wanted to just mention that to you guys and ask who got you guys interested in poker, what special person in your life. Thanks for listening. Have a good day, guys.
Condolences. For sure, and obviously that guy was quite important to you in your life, and sorry to hear that happened. Daniel, who was important in your life to get you started in poker?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I had a great relationship with my parents as well. My parents didn't play poker. We played a game called Sintad, which I didn't know what the hell it was. I didn't know that it was an actual game, but it's actually there. It's 9 men's Morris. Have you ever heard of that? Got really good at it. Sintad. My dad called it Sintad. It was like a card game. Basically, you get 9 pieces, and you have to move them around the table. Anyway, but I never played cards with him. And so the first guys that I started playing poker with in a basement game was my buddies Regev and Oren in high school. Israeli dudes from Toronto. We were like brothers. You know, they live in LA now. We just started playing basement games and then going from there. So, but I would say the person that was my most important influence once I became a poker player in terms of the trajectory of my career was without a doubt Jennifer Harmon. Because first and foremost, like Jennifer was there when I made all of the dumb mistakes, right? She saw me with a 30K bankroll, get drunk and be like, I'm going to play in that game. She's like, Daniel, you have 10 big bets. That's why. I was like, I don't care. It's like 1,500, 3,000. I've got 30. David Gray and Elliot Lesver in the game. I'm in. So that didn't go well. But what she used to do was like she used to let me watch her play. So before I was able to play, like this was early, like late 90s, early 2000s. Before I was able to play super high, like I was playing 200, 400, 300, 600 already at that time. I would watch her play, the 1 and 2, 2 and 4,000 games, right? and she was playing 3-4 hand, and I was licking my chops because like she was showing me her hole cards or whatever, and she's a fantastic player and definitely a favorite. And I'd watch David Gray play 3-handed and say, please let me at him. It's such a great spot. And eventually I was able to very quickly play in those games on my own because I built up a nice big bankroll. But she helped steer me in the right ways and stuff like that, even though I made mistakes and there was like only so much that she could, get me to do. Like she certainly helped. She helped with the learning curve, right? Because like, how do you sit down in that game for the first time and like, I got to sit down in that game for the first time with already having experience in that game, if that makes sense. Like I'd already been in that game without having to risk any money. Because typically when you play in a new game, you're going to be like a losing player for a bit. But I sat down right away and was a winning player because I already had a decent read on the opponents thanks to her.
Terrence?
Yeah, it's fun. There are so many people obviously who in the equivalent of what Jennifer was to Daniel, who helped me along the way, that it's hard to name just one. But it's funny. Like I'll go back to so his caller story. I forgot his name already. I apologize. But to the person who first got him into gambling and playing cards, because I think that's a more fun story, is that I was just basically hustled by my cousin, right? When I was younger. He's 4 years older than me, right? So he taught me how to gamble from a very young age. And it's always a good idea to teach your younger cousin who's 4 years younger than you how to gamble, because they're just not going to be as good at you. It doesn't matter what the thing is. We used to gamble on like Big Two. That was probably the big one for those of you guys who know Big Two. But it sort of set these things into motion that I really, when I was a young kid, I did like math. Like, it's grade 1, grade 2 math. So it's like arithmetic and stuff like that. But very quickly I was betting on sports. I mean, I think I was probably 10 when I placed my first sports bet. I was a bookie in grade 9. I really loved games and gambling and cards. I had an Intellivision. I had the poker and blackjack for Intellivision, but it was again that same cousin who, when now we're older, so we're in university, so I'm 18 and he's 22, and he just decides, let's fucking skip class and go down to the local casino, and so we do that, and he plays blackjack, and I don't have very much money, so I mostly just watch him play, and then I get bored of him playing blackjack, and I just wander around, and I see this poker room, and it's like, all these tables are so low and people are it's 4 and 8 limit hold'em. So those of you who know what a 4-8 limit hold'em game is, it's just a lot of white chips on the table and people are just like flinging them into the pot because nobody cares. It's like 7 ways to the flop for 4 bets every hand. I was like, oh my God, there's like a mountain of chips in the middle. And then like somebody turned over like a king and a queen and they just like shoved all the chips to that guy. And that guy like spent like 3 minutes stacking his chips while smoking a cigarette. Like I was like, this is a good, I need to find out more about this. So I can thank my cousin who hustled me and now who does not gamble at all. Like he thinks betting $20 on the UFC fight is like exciting gambling for him. But he got me for life.
Roscoe, who do you got?
I mean, for me, it's just the poker boom. Basically, I just started playing with friends in high school, and I have the most like modern story. I also don't have like a great poker career, but I just started playing in high school with friends, and I like immediately got obsessed with like the internet side of it and the poker culture, and I started. I got it onto 2+2 really early before I was any good at poker at all. And I was more enthralled with like the lifestyle side of it than the actual game. And I guess that's kind of true. I still am, which is why I do this. But yeah, that's kind of it for me.
My story is a lot like Terrence's with gambling rather than poker. And it was my dad who, loved the track. So he'd go to the track all the time. And if I wanted to hang out with my dad, I'd go to the track. And the P&E, Terrence, you will remember the P&E with the P wheel. Remember the P wheel? Where they get like they get like a bunch of little P's and there's 15 of them numbered 1 through 15. And then the wheel is 1 through 15. They spin the wheel. They give everybody a P. It costs you $5. The house takes one of the P's and they also take one of the bets out of the pot. So the rake is astronomical. But my dad would play. So he'd be there. I'm like 10 and give him my toonie that I had to make sure he bought one for me. And, I bucked the bad odds and won a couple of times. But yeah, no, going to the track with my dad was, I think I was betting on horses when I was 10 or 11 years old, trying, that kind of thing. So.
I mean, it is one of these really interesting things that like gambling is one of these things we have to protect our children from. And yes, of course we don't want like underage people betting large amounts of money and losing control and stuff like that. But I mean, gambling has taught me so many life lessons. You know, it's forced me to get good at math and just think about things in such a logical way. And it's brought all these people into my life, and it's been such a positive experience for me. But obviously, people have their demons, no question about it, with respect to gambling. But I don't think it's something that we need to scare our children away from. I think it's just like, it's like alcohol, right? It's like we have European countries where, you know, it's okay for like a 13-year-old to have a few sips of wine, but we don't send our kids off to college where they just get plastered the first time that they have alcohol. So
yeah. This one's good. Just, I don't know if we told it, but you know Sean Perry. Sean Perry's the new kid. Like some people are calling him the new Phil Hellmuth, right? Young guy, got a lot of Bitcoins. His father is Ralph Perry, who I used to play heads up in the 90s, right? His father's kind of an old school gambler, nitty and shoot the shangles and stuff. And Sean's this boisterous, peacock kind of guy, whatever.
Isn't Ralph Perry the get on your bike guy from Tony G?
Yeah. That's the one that Tony G said, right, bring on the rush. You call yourself a professional. Yeah. That's Ralph. I've known Ralph for a long time. So Ralph, old school hustler, his son Sean was making money in poker. He won the 5 Diamond. Before he did, he was building up from bankrolls, right? He'd go over to his dad's house and they'd play cards and he'd fucking beat him for $80,000 and take it. He's like, you got to teach him a lesson. This kid would come with like $100K bankroll, play with his dad. His dad would take $80,000 from him and tell him to go home. I mean, and now, now the kid's got too much money. He's got thousands of Bitcoins and he's certainly a character.
Nice. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Geez, I don't know how we filled an hour this week. It just kind of happened.
We did. We filled 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was worried. I was certainly worried. But anyway, thanks everybody.
Yeah. Listen, you've been doing this for what, 10 years?
It's forever.
Okay,
forever.
And every week, oh shit, guys. I don't know. I think it's going to be a short show. I don't know if we got more than 6 minutes to talk about nothing. I don't know. It's going to be time. And then fucking for 2 hours later, we're like, sorry, guys, we can't get to the emails because we went long this week.
Yep. It's the oldest running gag. It's the oldest running, except he's not doing it on purpose.
It's like the Matt Damon thing, right? Wasn't
it? Matt Damon, yeah. We bumped Matt Damon, for sure. All right, thanks to everybody out there for listening to us, Babylon, and thanks to you guys for getting together. And we're going to try for Fridays. We're going to try to keep going on Fridays. So we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.